When I was 17 years old, I gave a presentation on the question why there was such a shortage of women at the top of organizations. With a room full of students in front of me, of whom most of them were boys, I was curious to find out what their reaction would be after I was finished with my plia. However, there didn't come much pushback from my fellow students. It was the female professor who wanted to react to my story. She calmly explained that in her eyes, women were simply not made to climb the career ladder themselves. She saw men as the head that needed support from a neck, women being the neck, by supporting the men for taking care of the household, for example, and eventually children. She then asked me, if this is working, why would you ever want to change this formula? For a couple of seconds, I did not know what to say. And then I felt some rage boiling inside of me, and for me, that was the moment the fire in me started to blaze. That was the foreland of why I am here today. Because maybe, or even hopefully, you would all think this was a ridiculous comment for her to make. However, it is not that old-fashioned or ridiculous as we may hope, as this way of thinking is still present in most parts of organizational life nowadays. I'm here to talk about my research I conducted on the question, in what ways do Dutch top women make sense of gender inequality at the top of organizations? I'm well aware that diversity and inclusion as a topic is much broader than only gender. But tonight I will focus on gender diversity and I want to share my vision on that we should change that formula the female professor was talking about, and how. The higher you get climbing a career ladder in an organization, the fewer women you will encounter. And often this is explained by a lack of ambition among women in the Netherlands. And it's true that not all women want to climb the career ladder. This is the first group of women. They wish to spend their time and energy otherwise, instead of working full-time or making a career. And of course, that is absolutely fine. However, there are two other groups of women in the Netherlands. The second group, who wants to make a career and will do whatever it takes to get there. And then there's this third group, that's actually in the middle of the two extremes. And that's the one I will mainly focus on today. That's the group of women who do have ambition to climb the career ladder, but who are also sensitive for societal pressure holding women back. In the Netherlands, girls are taught different things than boys are. I want to share some words for you to show that it's not only happening in the Netherlands, but in most other countries. The following words are from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, a Nigerian female author and feminist role model. And to emphasize how important her words are also in the United States, I want to show that Beyoncé even used her words in one of her songs. The quote is as follows. We teach girls to shrink themselves, to make themselves smaller. We say to girls, you can have ambition, but not too much. You should aim to be successful, but not too successful. Otherwise, you will threaten the men. And because I'm a female, I'm expected to aspire to marriage. Now, marriage can be a source of love and joy and mutual support. But why do we teach girls to aspire to marriage and we don't teach boys the same? To summarize what you just stated is that from the day you were born, whether you're a boy or girl, causes what future society has for you in the Netherlands. And not only do we expect women to aspire to marriage, we then also expect them to have this desire to become a mother. And not only do we expect them to become a mother, we then also expect them to prioritize having a family, the dream of having a family, above their dream career. Men do not have to sacrifice anything. Men, with the support of the women, can have it all at the same time, as long as there's someone standing behind them to take care of most of the caretaker responsibilities. There are social norms influencing both men and women in different manner. But mostly this third group of women in the middle I was talking about. So what are these social norms I'm talking about? I already called about the motherhood shortly, but I will go in about some other social norms happening both inside and outside organizations. Already in 1990, the scientist Joan Ecker found that organizations were built on a model that does not welcome both men and women equally. And this is simply caused by the fact that back in the days, men used to go to work and women stayed at home to take care of the household. And the fact that organizations are built by men and for men is something we still reap the rewards of in nowadays organizational life. Or maybe reward is not the best way to put it. For employers, it's most convenient when someone is so-called sacrificing their life for the job. Someone who works full-time and does not have too many other priorities next to the job. These expectations of this ideal employee are expectations we based on men. We expect men to become the moneymaker. We expect them to climb the career ladder, to provide for his family. Even if men don't want to, they also have expectations to live up to prevent from lacking the status quo. And the fact that this is based on men shows that women are then automatically deviating. These men, this ideal employee, we expect of them to become a father at a certain point in their life. However, organizations are not really bothered by it, because he will probably have someone standing behind him to take care of most of the caretaker responsibilities, it being his partner or a family member. So organizations are not really bothered when someone says, I'm going to have a baby, and it's a man. From women, we also expect them to want to have a baby. However, we do feel like this will have a negative influence on her performance. And with that, women do not fit this so-called perfect mold. The fact that we have this so-called perfect mold shows that organizations are built on a male model instead of gender neutral. And so women can never really fit that one mold. Do you remember the wooden game puzzle? I think you all have played it in your life. It's like this wooden game puzzle with different openings, and you have different shapes. And you have to find the right opening for each of the shapes. So at the end of the game, all the pieces come together inside the box. But do you remember what happens when a toddler cannot seem to find the right opening for each of the shapes? It will probably try to push it through a couple of times, and then it will throw the shape aside. Stops trying. This also happens when you're trying to push women into the mold that's based on full-time working men. There are women who will get tired of it, who are fed up, because they're always deviating at some point and don't really know why. It's more like under the surface. And women leave the organization. It's happening this year again. The numbers of organizational women at top organizations are leaving their company is like higher than last year. The women get tired of it. And so what happens? Gender targets are again not met. So I see you thinking, okay, but do we have another example of this male model instead of gender neutral? The relation between being liked, likability, and having a successful career is positively related for men and negatively for women. Imagine, we have this inspiring leader. What should this person be like a CEO or a high manager? We expect this leader to be bold, perseverant, direct, someone to look up to, and who dares to make decisions when not everyone in the room seems to see eye to eye. But what do we expect of women as a society? A good woman is expected to be warm, kind, thoughtful, and more in the background than in the foreground. So what happens when this woman starts to behave like this inspiring leader? The expectations collapse. She is called harsh, cold, or to be acting like a man. But what if we were just being able to live with multiple norms, to see that we should break through of what is now happening, because that it has always been like this does not mean that it has to stay like this. Another example showing this male model instead of gender neutral is the existence of the Old Boys Network. And for those not familiar with the term, the Old Boys Network exists of white, middle-aged men at the top of organizations that are leading organizations and keep assigning other white, middle-aged men like themselves, jobs or board roles, instead of others like women. But how come this is even possible? I mean, we don't really believe that only white, middle-aged men are smart enough to lead an organization, do we? Okay, good. Nice. Science has a simple explanation for this type of behavior. It's called cultural cloning. Cultural cloning means that we as people, all of us, so not only the white middle-aged men, all of us, have the tendency to look for like-minded people because that feels safe and comfortable. It's easier to connect with someone you seem to have similarities with instead of someone who seems to differ from you. Imagine go to a birthday party where the only person you know is the one whose birthday it is. But of course, he or she is busy welcoming other guests, receiving gifts, and you don't want to be standing by yourself the whole evening. So what do? Most of us will scan the room and look for someone to connect with. It could be someone that has the same jacket you have, so you can make a comment about it, about a brand you also love. Or the one you hear talking about the university you also went to, because you can have a conversation about that. Not many of us, if not none of us, will scan the room and look for the person who seems to differ the most from ourselves and walk straight up there to have this first conversation. So this type of behavior also happens when the old boys get to meet other people like women. They tend to have a better connection with each other than with women, and so they keep giving these roles to these men again. So I don't think we can really blame these white middle-aged men or the old boys for this type of behavior. But does that automatically mean that we just have to accept it for what it is then? Absolutely not. Because it's creating a situation of exclusion of others. So we have to make them aware of this type of behavior so we can learn to step over this natural tendency. Imagine all the things what you can learn, all the things you could learn, if you would be open to people who are not already thinking the same way you do. And last but not least, there is this big thundercloud above the heads of ambitious women and not so much above the heads of ambitious men. I already mentioned it, parenthood. When women are around the age of 30, organizations become more hesitant to contract or promote them because they believe she will have children in the near future. Even if they don't know whether she wants to have children or not. But when she does want to have children, organizations are scared that this will have a negative influence on her performance. And not only because of maternity leave, and something that's mentioned in a lot of cases because she'll be away for a couple of months. No, because organizations expect that her priorities will shift from the job first to children. Top men with children are seen as top men in organizations, while top women with children are seen as mothers in the first place. So inside, you are a mother, but outside, you're called barely a mother for working full-time and have children. So you see the paradox here? Inside the organization where you have to work, you are a mother. And outside the organization, when you're with your children, you're being called a career go-getter. It's not rare for top women or women who work full-time to be called a bad mother. This still happens nowadays on social media, at the schoolyard, within families and other social environments. And it's not a comment we hear as often about men, do we? What if we could just accept when a woman wants to work full-time when she has children, but also when a man does not want to work full-time, because we're also judging them on that type of behavior. And what do you think benefits a child more? A mother who's at home because she works part-time or she stopped working, but she resents her buried career dream? Or the mother who may have fewer hours to spend with her child, but when she does, she feels happy and fulfilled because she can also live her other dream as well. So again, why would you ever want to change this formula the female professor was talking about when I was 17 years old? Because I believe your dream should not be stopped by societal pressure or judgment of others, no matter your gender. I once was inspired by a quote of Nancy Duarte, who stated the following: "The future is not a place we are going to. It's not like we're hopping on some sort of train and then we arrive, hey, there's the future. No, it's a place that you get to create. You are the change makers of the future, and we together decide what the future will look like." I believe we should be able to break through this so-called perfect mold, break through of it and not live by only these boxes for men and boxes for women. And I personally have a lot of faith in our or your generation, and let's try to welcome different shapes as we are different shapes. And thinking back about the Old Boys Network and cultural cloning, next time try to step over this natural tendency to only talk to people who seem to be like you. And regarding parenthood, let people decide on an individual level what's best for their family. Because what's best for one family does not have to be best for another. But the last thing I want to share with you, and I think that's the most important takeaway of the night, is I want to ask you to believe in yourself no matter your gender. Because at the end of the day, nothing is as strong as this fire in you once it starts to blaze.